The median one-bedroom rental in Cambridge today is $2,350, and this is Renters Matter. I'm Chris Schmidt, and here tonight to talk to you about something that renters deal with all too often, and homeowners deal with only infrequently: moving. Moving is the worst part of renting. Absolutely, without a doubt, there are many bad parts of renting, whether it is abusive landlords, dealing with constant changes in pricing, whether it is dealing with an inability to paint the walls or hang the things you want to do, whether it's dealing with an apartment that's falling apart and which you have no investment in, or sometimes are not even allowed to fix. All of those things are terrible about being a renter, but one of the things that is especially terrible about being a renter is just moving. Moving sucks in many different ways. There's three kind of core areas of moving that suck. One, you have to find a new place. Now, that's not necessarily the order they go in, but you have to find a new place. You have to dig through listings. You have to find something that meets your needs, whether it's transit to work, or whether it is, within range of the schools that your kids are in, or whether it is an apartment that has enough bedrooms for you, and something that's within your price range, which of course is very difficult given that the prices continue to go up by an average of 7 to 8% per year above inflation, definitely outpacing the amount of increased money that you are making. Two, just paying for moving. Moving is so expensive, and it's expensive not just in how much money it costs to actually move your stuff, whether it's boxes or renting a truck or anything else like that, but also in the amount of money that you have to pay to get into a new place in Cambridge. But another part that is, really difficult is that you don't know when it's going to happen. You can't really plan ahead for moving often because it's oftentimes based on things that are out of your control. And that makes it an even more difficult thing because it is taking a difficult job that is difficult to carry out, that is expensive and time consuming, that most people just can't afford, and putting it in a timeline that you have almost no control over. Moving sucks. It is one of the worst parts of renting. Unfortunately, for many residents of Cambridge, it's a common part of renting, with prices that are constantly increasing and landlords who routinely raise the rent to match the new market rates. Moving is just a normal part of life for most renters. In many cases, people expect to move almost annually. And this is where one of the aspects of kind of the hidden cost of rent comes in. So I said earlier that the average price of a one-bedroom apartment in Cambridge right now is $2,350. $2,350 is a lot of money to be spending every month. If you spend that much every month, it means that you're spending about $27,000 a year, and it means that realistically you are paying more than is considered sustainable unless you are making $100,000 a year in your household. So, at $100,000, but so that's one thing. But you have to keep in mind that $2,350 is not the whole story of what you're paying. If you're a student, a grad student at MIT, who's here, or someone who's in a short-term situation where they've come for a job and they got a job at a biotech company in Cambridge, right? So they're starting a new position. They just graduated from some school somewhere, and they're coming to Cambridge to live here and work here at a biotech company. All right, so they're going to come in, and they're going to be coming from somewhere else. They're not going to have a lot of options on being able to look for something for very long. They may have graduated in June, interviewed, gotten a job in July or August, and then they need to find a spot. But finding a place is difficult, and so they're going to have to pay for what's available. If you're looking for a September 1st move-in date, which is of course one of the aspects of moving which is terrible, is competing with the September 1st move-in date. But if you're looking for a September 1st move-in date, which is when something like 85% of Boston area apartments turn over, it means that you're competing with all these other people, and if you're looking in July or August, it means that you're fighting against a whole bunch of other people who have already staked in their claim on the apartments they're going to have in June or July. And you're going to have to pay what's available. So $2,350 a month for one bedroom. You're going to come in, but when you start that apartment, right, to get that apartment, you're going to have to go through a process of applying. You're going to talk to an apartment leasing person, whether it's the person who's acting as the seller, the renter's agent, or as your agent. You're going to talk to one of these apartment rental agencies who's going to take you around to all the crappy apartments they can't get anybody to rent before they actually show you anything decent, and they're going to try and rent to you, and you're going to walk in the door and say, okay, great, I have found the place, I would like to rent this. And they're going to say, okay, $2,350, we'd like a $10,000 check, please. And you're going to go, what? $10,000. And they said, well, yeah, first month of rent, last month of rent, your security deposit, and your fee for me finding this apartment for you. Okay, $10,000. Now, you have to keep in mind that as a renter, you're not going to get that fee back. Right, that fee is a one-time cost, and if you're only going to live in this place for a year, that means that fee that you had to pay to this apartment because it's all you could find. Even though next year you're probably going to move to something that's better suited, you're going to find something that's closer to work because you're going to start looking in April rather than in July or August. You're going to have to pay that $2,350, and that's just money gone. So that's $200 a month, effectively extra rent you're paying for the duration. But as any renter in the Boston area will tell you, that's not the only money that you're going to lose in this deal. I have yet to find someone who gets money back from their security deposit. Now, I'm not saying that nobody gets anything back. There is the case that people get portions of their security deposit back. But getting that security deposit back is almost like a running joke. It's a trope. Like, the idea that you would get your security deposit back is just not something that nobody would think of. Because you don't. For the most part, you don't get that security deposit back. By the time you've lived in a place for a year, the landlord will be able to find things that they're going to fix or claim they fixed. And while they technically have to give you some set of receipts or documentation on what they fixed or paid for, most landlords don't. And trying to take a landlord to small claims court or deal with it is almost impossible because, like, what are you going to do? Who has time for that over what is effectively 1 month's or half a month's rent? You're going to spend dozens of hours talking to lawyers or going to court or filing paperwork. It's really, for the most part, just not worth it. So landlords get away with it. Landlords get away with effectively keeping that security deposit. So I've moved twice, and in both cases, my landlord kept my entire security deposit. In one case, I had to fight with a landlord who claimed that I hadn't paid last month's rent when I signed up to rent the place initially, and claimed that I owed them last month's rent in addition. I eventually just, that didn't, I don't know how we resolved that, but I live in a different place now and I haven't spoken to them for 5 years, so I guess we figured it out somehow. So this is the reality, is that a $2,350 a month apartment rented for 1 year, you're going to spend $400 a month extra in those upfront fees that you're not going to get back. Now, that means that when you go to find a new apartment, and it'll have a September 1st turnover date like everybody else, so you're competing with the trucks that are storing themselves and ramps and everything else like that, is going to want, maybe you do better this time. You find one that's only $2,100 a month. It's closer to work, it better fits your needs, it's closer to the T or to the grocery store or whatever else like that because you were able to start looking for earlier and find something. But you still owe them now another $8,500. You're not going to get any of your security deposit back before you move out, and probably not for a while afterwards. So while you're still paying rent on the current place you live in, you have to put down a first month, a last month, a security deposit, and a fee on another place. And while there are no-fee apartments that do rent, you can find them in places. That brings us into the finding a place to rent part of this, which is almost, depending on your situation, worse. Money is money, and when I moved to Cambridge, I had to borrow money from family. Like, we couldn't afford $10,000 to move to Cambridge. We had to borrow from family. We had to, work within what we had. But finding a place was a nightmare. Finding a place, I was moving from Manchester, New Hampshire, and so I was able to drive into Cambridge. I was able to come and see apartments in Cambridge. But finding a place is so hard. I don't know the city. I don't know where the good parts of town are, the bad parts of town. I don't know where is close to the T. I don't know where I'm going to be working. I don't know any of these things. We moved down here so my wife could go to Wellesley, and she knew what she was looking for, but I didn't know anything. And this is the typical experience. But even once you've lived here, trying to find something that meets your needs is almost impossible. If we look at, for example, the amount of, the number of apartments that are available up near Davis Square, for example. If you're looking for an apartment in Cambridge for less than $2,100 a month near Davis Square, there's two apartments up there right now. That's all you get. Those are the only choices you have. And if you want to be up there, you have to do that. Otherwise, you can look in Cambridgeport or East Cambridge, where there's maybe a few dozen listings total. There's 67 apartments in Cambridge currently for rent under $2,100 theoretically. However, Now we get into the tricky part of apartment hunting in a market which is completely saturated and leaning towards those who are rentees rather than renters. I don't know who own the apartments, right? Um, so almost all apartments are listed with an apartment listing agency. There are some which are by owner, but sometimes those can be pretty sketchy as well. The key thing is you have to know that a bunch of these just don't exist. If you look at listings in the greater Boston area and you look at the lowest cost listings, many of those listings don't exist. And you can usually tell this because those listings have been on Zillow, for example, which is a site that I often use just to kind of check these things out. On Zillow, for more than 15, 20 days, those apartments don't exist. They're almost always fakes. And the reason that they're there is to get you into the clutches of an apartment rental agency. So they list these apartments that maybe they had at one point or maybe they didn't. They list them at especially low prices compared to the price point of the market. So you look and you say, okay, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom in Cambridge. And they're like, great, we have one for $3,000 a month. And you're like, great, like give it to me. That's way below the price anyone else is paying. Like I will take it. And when you look and you see it's been on the market for 24 days or 26 days or 42 days, you have to step back and say, oh no, this isn't a real apartment. This hasn't been available for months or maybe ever. It may just be a complete fake. These listings are designed to get your name. You contact the apartment rental agent, and then they get your name, and then they call our phone number, and they call you all the time with all of their other listings. Oh, that just rented. It's not available. We have many other great listings to show you at $3,800 a month or $3,900 a month. We have these apartments available. We're gonna help you out here. We're gonna make a great deal for you. Great. And that doesn't even count the legitimate, like, fraudulent scams that you deal with. If you go to Craigslist, I have routinely helped friends who are like, what is up with this apartment, right? Like, what is up with this? Something is wrong here, and I don't know what it is. Well, what is wrong with this apartment that you're looking at is that the stock photo of this Cambridge apartment, as you can search here and see, has been shown in listings in Chicago, San Francisco, San Diego, Seattle, and Baltimore. This apartment does not exist. This is someone trying to scam you. And the scams there are everything from like, oh, if you just write me a deposit check because I know you're going to love it and I can't get you in to see it because there's tenants there until I have a deposit because of insurance and blah, 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 blah. The goal is to get you to commit to something, ideally something that gives them your bank account number before you ever see the apartment. And these are just flat out fraudulent scams. The other thing, if you're looking for small apartments, is you have to keep in mind that anything that's on the low end of the pricing scale is not actually its own apartment. Instead, it is a shared room in a larger apartment. If you look for a 1-bedroom apartment and you see something in Cambridge which is $1,500 a month, what you are seeing is a 1-bedroom room share in a 4-bedroom apartment. So this apartment is actually costing, $4,000, $5,000 a month. You're paying $1,500 as your part of it. And this isn't just true in Cambridge. This is throughout the Boston region. So by the time you find something and get past the scammers and get past the apartment rental agents and get past the people who are just renting you a room when you want your own home, and past the people who are renting you something that is, they'll claim as one thing and go to another, and get past the credit checks and the applications and compete with the 4 other people who are going from the same apartment. Like when I rented my current apartment, literally there were 7 of us in line with checks. Like 7 of us in line with checks saying like, we're all ready to go. Here we go. Here's my check, my application. We've all filled this out already. Like, here we go. I want this apartment. For one apartment, right? Once you get past all that, now you've got to move. And moving is a nightmare. Just an absolute nightmare. And I know everyone's moved, well, almost everyone's moved before. You've all dealt with packing up boxes and all this other stuff. But the problem is that moving, when you're trying to do it in Boston or Cambridge or whatever, is is a nightmare for more than just the usual reason, right? Like in a sane rental market, in a situation where the rental market is not as hot as a rental market where there is a small amount of vacancy, you can change your rental and things will start on the 15th or on the 1st of October or whatever. You'll be able to kind of transition and maybe you pay an extra 2 weeks rent or anything else like that. But in Boston, that's not what happens. In Boston, because the vacancy rate is so low, in Boston and the Cambridge area, because there are so few apartments, you are competing with everybody and their brother. What it means is that you're all moving on the same day. You're moving out on oftentimes, August 31st, and you're moving in on September 1st. And you can't get the keys until 10 a.m., which is probably actually going to be noon or maybe 2 p.m. because the people who were in there before there didn't actually get out on time, and the landlord has to go through and clean it, and there's really nothing that we can do about this, blah, 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 blah. But you are so much struggling with this. So, every year, as you look at Reddit or other conversations like this, people are like, okay, I have to move out on August 31st. I can't move in until 2 p.m. on September 1st. Like, what do I do in the meantime? Like, I have no room. I have no bed. Like, all of my stuff is packed up, and I'm a poor college student, so I can't stay in a hotel. Like, what am I doing? So every year there's, like, a pilgrimage of people who just, like, bar hop until they can't anymore and then wander the streets of Boston waiting for there to be possibility to, with all of their stuff in a rental truck that they're paying an extra day for because they don't have any choice, because that's how it works to move here. Right? But that's just moving day. Like, moving day is a nightmare. It's a nightmare for people who live here. It's a nightmare for everybody. All the roads are blocked. Nobody can get anywhere. Store Drive gets backed up because someone ran their truck into it because they missed the 73 signs that say no trucks. But before you even do the move, you have to pack. And oh my God, packing is terrible. Packing up all your shit is like the most traumatic experience because you've got all this and you start out thinking like, okay, this time I'm going to do it better. This time for sure, I'm going to make sure that I start early enough that I'm not just throwing shit in a box in the last day, that I'm not just like tossing all of the kitchen utensils next to the bathroom supplies, that I'm not getting toothpaste all over my books. I'm going to do this right. And I'm going to throw away all the stuff that I'm needing to throw away. And you'll start in April. You're like, okay, I've got to have to move. I'm going to have to deal with this. Like, I'm going to plan ahead. I'm going to pack. It's going to be great. On August 29th, I guarantee you're going to be running back out to the UPS store to pick up another 3 boxes that you're going to toss it in as fast as you can because you've realized that none of this stuff is getting organized the way you want it to. You're going to get to the other side and you're going to have written junk on the side of 17 of your boxes that are all going to go in the corner because you don't know where they go or what they are, and you're going to have to sort through them for the next 6 months, by which point you're having to look for another new apartment again because your landlord has just decided that they're going to condoize the place or they're going to renovate it, and you're going to have to move. But in addition to the packing part being terrible, you've got to find a truck, which isn't available for love nor money. You've got to pack it all into your truck, and again, you've got to live basically with nothing overnight and hope that, you've got someplace to store your stuff. And this is just the normal experience. For the 20,000 students who go to school here in our colleges in Cambridge, these people oftentimes have to move every year. Many of them, especially grad students, don't have access to dorms. Many of them don't have access to these other things, and they make a life here. They move in and they settle, and then find out that no, I'm not going to be able to afford to live here next year. And some of this comes back to the fundamental problem of what causes you to make this such a stressful decision in the first place is you have no control. You have no control over when you're going to move. You have no control over deciding these things because your landlord only has to give you 30 days notice in order to vacate. And while it is possible to challenge a landlord and say, no, I know you want me gone, but I'm going to stay, I'm going to keep paying the current rent, I'm not going to sign a new lease, I'm not going to do these other things, and fight it, the reality is that at some point you're going to have to move if someone tells you to. Now, I've had to move from Cambridge Apartments twice, both on short notice. Once my landlord died, passed away, and her home was being sold. The other, my landlord got in a divorce with their partner. Apartment had to be sold. In both cases, I found out that I was going to have to move with not much more than 30 days notice. in both cases, I found out that I was going to have to move and had to scramble to look for something, had to scramble to save up money, had to scramble to do these other things. And that's difficult. It's difficult when you're looking at something and saying, like, I don't love that I can't feel stable in my housing situation. We talked to Burhan 2 weeks ago, and Burhan explained that he was talking to someone who had been renting in Cambridge for 70 years. They've been renting in Cambridge. And many of these long-term renters are very lucky. They're lucky that they have a landlord or someone else who is able to provide a stable situation for them. They work with a homeowner who they've lived with for a long time. They're in a partnership with them, and that's great. It really is. And I'm very thankful that I have been able to, for the most part, have a good relationship with my landlords. I've done repairs on every place that I've lived in, whether it's replacing the water heater or fixing a stopped toilet or calling a plumber for some other thing. I have replaced sinks. I have replaced, dishwashers. I've done all of this. And I love when I have a successful relationship with a landlord, but when things go bad, and for many people, you have to keep in mind that they're not working with landlords who are small homeowners or anything else like that. They're dealing with big corporate giants who are going to raise the rent when they decide to raise the rent. They're going to change the prices when they decide to change the prices. And they're not necessarily going to give you a whole lot of notice. Now, Cambridge, Massachusetts is pretty good. At least you have 30 days notice. You do go month to month afterwards. Eviction is a time-consuming process. These things do have some protections, but there's nothing like in Cambridge a right of first refusal. If a landlord wanted to sell your apartment or your home that you live in, there's no opportunity for you to say, like, hey, I'll give you a better offer. I'll match the offer. Like, there's no opportunity for you to do that. There is no limitation on just cause on evictions. You can be evicted for effectively anything, with the exception of organizing with a tenants union or being evicted based on a protected class like your gender or something else like that. You can be evicted for whatever. We have no protections there, where a landlord has to show some kind of cause in order to evict you. We have no limitation on the amount that rent can be increased every year. We have no, whether it's rent control or rent stabilization, like has been passed in Oregon and California, or rent, like more strenuous rent control like you've seen in New York and San Francisco. Like, these things don't exist. And so a landlord can raise your rent 20%, or in some cases where we've seen in areas of Boston where a landlord wants to get a tenant out of a place, up to 50%. There's no limitations on those things. And as a renter, you just never have that sense of stability. You never have a sense that your home is your home, because it's not. It's really not. And there's very little, despite Massachusetts' relatively strong tenant protection laws, there is nothing that tries to protect you when you go to renew a lease from having to deal with those issues. In many cases, those who are unable to fork over those $10,000 to begin with, or those who are unable to, have good credit scores, they don't even have the ability to have a lease, right? You don't even have a 1-year lease. You don't even have a 6-month lease. You're a month to month all the way along, or your lease will expire and your landlord won't write you a new one, meaning that they can come in at any time and say, you're out of here. I'm lucky, again, that I've been able to have 1-year leases from my landlords the entire time that I've been living in Cambridge, which means that, or 1 or 2-year leases, which means that I have stability to know that I won't have to move right now. There's also no amount of, any kind of, if an eviction is performed, no assistance that's given to renters, either by the city or by the landlord. None of this is funded. So that means that when you are looking for this new apartment, because your landlord has decided to sell, because they've realized they can sell to somebody who will flip it and make a bunch of money, and they've decided, like, oh, no, I'm just not going to rent to you anymore. Like, that's it. We're done. There's no one who will support you paying for those costs of moving, whether it's moving boxes, moving trucks, or really the upfront cost of a new apartment. All of those things are out of your control. And as a renter in Cambridge, you basically can never feel secure. And because the prices in Cambridge continue to go up and up and up, because the prices in Cambridge continue to change every year, it means that you really have to expect that within 2-3 years, you're not going to be able to afford to live where you are anymore. And you're going to have to downsize. You're going to have to move to a less well-appointed apartment, or you're going to have to leave Cambridge. And I've watched this happen to so many of my friends. So many of my friends have lost the ability to live in Cambridge because they've been priced out. Again and again and again, we see people priced out of Cambridge. And that's one of the things that is the worst about this, is that you have no stability. Moving sucks. It absolutely does. It is backbreaking, time-consuming, demoralizing work where nothing ever goes the way you want it to, and you'll get to your new place and find out that none of your furniture fits, and really you have no idea how you got your furniture out of the previous place because it didn't fit in there either. You really have no idea how things got into where they are, because when you go to pull them back out again, they don't come back out, and you realize that you have gathered away corners and piles of squirreled away for the past 2-3 years, or 1 year even, that you've lived someplace, and that there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that you can do to get rid of it in a timely manner. Finding apartments sucks. Dealing with the liars and the frauds, dealing with the fact that everything is so expensive, that everything on Zillow looks great, and then you walk into it and find out that the bathroom is actually in the kitchen, and that sink that they showed you, yeah, that was actually in the bedroom. All of that sucks. But more than any of that, what sucks as a renter is not having the sense that your home is your home, that you have a stable living situation, that you have the ability to stay here long term. Because you know the price is going to go up. And you know that your landlord has the ability to change what they're going to charge. And they have the ability to decide they're just not going to rent anymore. They're going to sell it, they're going to condoize it, they're going to do whatever. And really, that's the most difficult part of renting, is never feeling like the place that I've called home for 15 years, that I have any sense that I'll still be living here 2 years from today. And that's what makes me sad. I'm Chris Schmidt. This has been Renters Matter, talking about why it sometimes sucks to be a renter. Thanks for watching.